That one. Volume. Volume. No, that wasn't it. It's supposed to be the other thing. It's supposed to be out there. It's supposed to be coming up there. That's supposed to be off. He's invited somebody in. But he hasn't got in. But he doesn't seem to be in there. So you should use them again. I'm not sure. That's the one I want. Aha. That's what they wanted. Can't find the link. Well, he's been on. He's been in already. I have no. I have no idea. I have this copy invitation. Let's open it up here. See the invitation. Here, there's the meeting ID. Meeting ID is 989 865 3253. And the password is 123456. 123456. Yeah. See if he's here. No response, he said. Here he goes. There he is. Okay.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
On the speaker, give me a second. That one. Okay. Okay. Can you hear us?
I hear you fine.
Right, that's good. Okay, we're going to turn you up a bit. Because that's a bit better.
That's good.
That's good. Right, okay. I'm going to close that so we can see you and only you. And I'm going to turn around the camera so that you can see everybody else. Okay. I don't know, with your brother in the room, am I supposed to be doing the introduction or not? I don't know if that's the. I don't know if that. I don't know if Gary's got anything, any secrets that we might be getting out. But actually, guys, I have been. No, God forbid. I've been waiting for this for a long time because this is my world. This is what I love. I love a bit of intrigue. I love. First of all, I love Jerusalem more than anything in the whole. And I love. No. Jerusalem's on top. She's not here. She doesn't know. And is it being recorded? It is being recorded. Okay, don't send it to my wife. Jerusalem is amazing, and the old city, Ir David, all the fun and games that goes on around there is really just my whole world. I love it so much, and I've been waiting for this for ages, and we're so blessed to have you. And I'm going to turn you around so that you can see everyone. We're going to keep this on loud. On the microphone is going to be on, so that if there are any questions, you can ask questions. If you'll take questions, Chaim, I think that would be great. Maybe keep questions to the end, but it's all yours. You can have it. Go for it. I'm waiting with bated breath for this.
So, Erev Tov, good evening, everybody. Here it's just after 1:30 p.m. in Jerusalem, and it's a pleasure to be with you, and certainly a pleasure to see Gary, Leslie, and even Ari there, which is another warm surprise. And first of all, Rabbi, I want to encourage you to put your money where your mouth is and come to Jerusalem, bring your community to Jerusalem. I'd be happy to arrange amazing eye-opening tours for you, and let's do it. So, I know the flight time has been reduced since the Abraham Accords, so, fewer excuses. So first of all, I just want to thank you very much for considering me and considering my organization, JCAP, which is the Jerusalem Center for Applied Policy, to brief you and to bring you up to speed about some of the things that are going on in Jerusalem. And we're going to try and discuss the presentation or divide the presentation today up into two sections. The one section is understanding some of the existential threats that are facing Jerusalem today, that many of us, if not most of us, are unaware of, and also we'll talk about some of the interesting land reclamation projects that I'm personally involved with when it comes to trying to get a hold of properties in and around the old city of Jerusalem that basically were stolen from the Jewish people in 1948, and we'll describe some of the efforts that we're doing to reclaim them back to the Jewish people and how we do that. So first of all, you all aware, maybe in Perth a little bit less, but what's hit Australia in the last couple of years, when you see how people have turned so anti-Semitic, or their anti-Semitism has risen up and floated up to the surface, and the narrative is terrible. The way they are accusing Israel and Jews of being genocidal maniacs and illegal occupiers, and all these words that we weren't really used to hearing them when we grew up, or they weren't in our comfort zone, and suddenly we're hearing them every day and all day on the news. And I want to give you just one example, if we can stay in the Australian context. A couple of months ago, there was a terrible terror attack in Jerusalem, not far from my office in Ramot. And after the terror attack, and I heard about it, I was worried, first of all, that some of my workers who take buses to our office, God forbid, might have been involved, injured or worse in the attack. And just in general, just to see what had happened and to see if there's anything I could do. So it was a very short drive to the site of the terror attack, where you might recall, unfortunately, 6 Israelis were brutally murdered by 2 terrorists that came into Jerusalem from Judea and Samaria, crossed over the security barrier into Jerusalem, and then got on the bus in this Ramot junction and murdered 6 Jews. And I was there, and the word got around soon that I was an English speaker, and a few of the international TV outlets came to interview me. And one of them was ABC News, Australian ABC News. And the guy started talking to me and asking me about, the event. And then he asked me the following question. Do you think that it is because of the Israeli occupation of the West Bank that this terror attack happened? And I don't often lose my cool when I'm interviewed, but my blood boiled in hearing, this biased statement, this loaded statement, almost accusing us of being responsible for the fact that 2 despicable terrorists had just murdered 6 innocent Jews on a bus, including, youngsters and elderly men. And, it was just indicative of this terrible narrative that we hear all the time, including in Australia, about the Jews are automatically guilty of everything. We're guilty of genocide. We're guilty of illegal occupation. We're guilty of just existing. And, from the river to the sea indicates that they're not interested in having a Jewish state, certainly not in the area that we are now, in the land of Israel, but not even anywhere. And if you extend that and you hear what these people are saying, they're really not interested in having Jews exist anywhere, not just the Jewish state. I can demonstrate this terrible phenomenon with a joke, actually, that I heard, and I'll repeat to you soon, just to get you into the mood. This couple, American couple, decided, a young couple with their 4-year-old daughter. If you've heard the joke, lift up your hand. I can only see some of you. But anyhow, this couple, American couple with their 4-year-old daughter, takes them to the Central Park Zoo in Manhattan, in Central Park, to see the animals. And so they go into the zoo, and the young daughter is very excited to see all the animals. And they come to the lion's cage, and she's amazed by this lion. And the little girl is stretching through the bars of the cage. And somehow, because she was so small and thin, she actually fell into the lion's cage. And the lion, wow, licks his lips, and he sees this young girl in his cage, and he comes up to her and he takes her into his mouth, and he starts walking away, just thinking what a delicious present has just been given to him. And the parents are going crazy, and they're freaking out, and they're crying, and they're screaming, and the people are all screaming, and who's going to do something, and what can we do, and how can you stop this? And suddenly, from the crowd, a guy jumps up, starts climbing up to the top of the cage, jumps into the lion's cage, comes up to the lion, who's looking at him with hostility and about to do whatever he can. And the guy comes from behind, hits the lion in the face, kicks him, jumps on him, flips him over, gives him another smack. The girl gets released. He grabs the girl. He jumps up, climbs up the cage with the girl in his arms, and jumps over to the other side and saves her and hands her over to her parents, who are obviously very grateful and can't believe this miracle that they've just seen. And a man comes up to this guy, and he says to him, it was absolutely incredible what you just did. And I just, I'm in awe of you. He says, I'm actually a reporter from the New York Times. And can you tell me, how did you do this? So the guy looks at me and says, well, actually, I was in special operations in the IDF. And the next day, the headline in the New York Times said the following: genocidal Israeli settler brutally assaults lion in Central Park Zoo and steals his lunch. And if it wasn't so sad, it would be funny. But this is what we're having to deal with day in and day out, including in the Australian, news environment, obviously, with the exception of Sky News, part of Sky News, who you all know is very pro-Israel. But I travel a lot, and I meet and am interviewed quite a lot by the international media, and we have to deal with this day in and day out. A few weeks ago, Reuters came to my house where I live in Bet El, next door Ramallah, and they spent an hour and a half interviewing me, and they were trying to trap me, at every little thing they can get. Instead of trying to get the good news, that, they try, oh, what about the settler violence? And what about genocide? And what about this? And, it's like, this is what we have to deal with. Now, take that problem of narrative and amplify it into something which is much more real and much more existential. Because yes, the narrative takes and develops people's opinions and people's attitudes, which is critical because attitudes eventually bring about deeds. And we've seen that time and time again, how people are murdered because of ideologies and narratives and attitudes. And Jerusalem is facing existential problems today. Some of them come from on the ground issues, which I'll describe, and some of them come from narratives, from an ideology, a toxic ideology, which is spread around the world on the one hand, and also among the hostile population or potentially hostile population in Jerusalem, which in our particular case is the Arab population in Jerusalem. So first of all, I want to give you a quick survey of Jerusalem today. Today, Jerusalem has got about 1 million residents. Rabbi, I'm sure you visited Jerusalem often and you're aware of it and you love it, but probably you haven't really been in the eastern part of the city, other than the Kotel in the Old City, which I'm sure you all realize was under Jordanian occupation before 1967. And thank God that whole area of Eastern Jerusalem was liberated in the 67 war. But before 67, all of what is today known as Eastern Jerusalem was under illegal Jordanian occupation. And that means the areas like the Old City, the City of David, in fact, all the areas that the rabbi mentioned were under Jordanian occupation before 1967. And we liberated those areas. And not only did we liberate them, but we built about 15 Jewish neighborhoods in the areas and next to Arab neighborhoods that were liberated in the Six-Day War. So you might be familiar with neighborhoods like French Hill or Ramat Eshkol or Pisgat Ze'ev or Neve Yaakov or Gilo in the south, East Talpiot. These are Har Choma. These are all Jewish neighborhoods that were built in the area that was liberated in the Six-Day War. And those neighborhoods are what effectively are part of what people call East Jerusalem or Eastern Jerusalem. But intertwined in those neighborhoods, in which live, by the way, over 250,000 Jews in the eastern part of the city, there are also Arab neighborhoods, about 30 Arab neighborhoods, in which live about 400,000 Arabs. So if we do the math, there's about 1 million residents in Jerusalem. There are about 400,000 Arabs. So our first existential problem that we have is that the Arabs today constitute about 40% of the of the population of Jerusalem. And that number is increasing, not decreasing. Anybody who's trying to buy real estate in Jerusalem will realize that it's beyond the economic means of most people, certainly most Israelis, and certainly most young couples who are looking to, upwardly mobile and want to buy real estate. It's almost impossible to pay, $1 million American dollars plus to buy a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom apartment in Jerusalem. So what's happened is that the Jews are leaving Jerusalem, and all Jews are leaving, the Haredi Jews, the religious Zionist Jews, the secular Jews. Some of them leave for, because they want to find jobs in Tel Aviv, but many are leaving because they can't find jobs in Jerusalem and because they can't afford to buy real estate in Jerusalem, and so they move elsewhere. On the other hand, in the Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem, there's an incredible amount of illegal building and illegal construction, which unfortunately the city hall does not deal with in any meaningful way. And so Arabs are moving to Jerusalem, A, because they can buy real estate or rent real estate relatively cheaply, but more importantly, they get Jerusalem residency, which is like an ID card, and they get pretty much the same rights as any Jew gets: national insurance, health insurance, unemployment insurance, etc. The only difference between a permanent resident, which 95% of the Arabs in East Jerusalem are, and an Israeli citizen is that the permanent resident, whether they're Arab or Jewish, cannot vote for the Knesset because they're not a citizen. And an Israeli citizen can vote for the Knesset. But all permanent residents can vote for the city hall. And that's why I said that if you already have 40% of the population of Jerusalem today who are non-Jews, who are Arabs, and that number's going up because Jews are leaving. A net number of about 7,000 Jews leave Jerusalem every year. In other words, there are Jews that come to Jerusalem and there are Jews that leave Jerusalem every year for various reasons. But in the past many years, the net amount has been a loss, not a gain for Jerusalem. In the last year, it was about 7,000 Jews that left, net amount that left. And so what's happening is at the moment, about 39.5 or 40% of the population of Jerusalem are Arabs and not Jews. If that trend continues, then within a decade, we might have a situation where they will vote in a Hamas-supported Arab mayor of Jerusalem. And you can imagine the implications of that. Not simple. Not to mention the budgets, the committees, the policy, what would happen if you had an Arab majority in Jerusalem and an Arab mayor. And up to now, Arabs have not participated in the municipal elections in Jerusalem for ideological and other reasons. But many of them are discovering a weapon that they weren't that aware of before, and a very, very strong weapon that exists among the Arab minority in Jerusalem, and it's called democracy. And they understand now that if they use their blue ID card and participate in municipal elections in Jerusalem, they could take over Jerusalem without firing one shot or without stabbing one individual, even though they get a lot of nachas, in inverted commas, a lot of joy about stabbing and killing Jews, but they will be able to achieve political goals by using what I call the demographic Trojan horse. So that's one big issue which is facing Jerusalem today. Rabbi, did you send to, or do you have on the screen the geopolitical dashboard which appeared in your advertisement? I'm not sure if you have it, if people can see it. Is there way? Say again?
We only have you on the screen.
No, I'm saying, but you don't have a way to put that up on the On the screen, do you want me to share a screen with it?
Chaim, can you share the screen?
Let me see. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can do that. Hold on. Let me see if I can do it. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Let me get back to the Zoom. Can I share a screen?
Yeah, you should be able to now.
Hold on a second. Okay, tell me if you see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to just briefly share with you are these 6 points, and then I'll start talking about the land reclamation. Then we'll open it up for discussion. Are you all hearing me okay? And you seeing the screen okay?
Yeah.
Yes? Do you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Chaim, Chaim, can you close the all tools box there on the left? You click the X by all tools. On your left?
Hold on Oh, yes, sure. Sorry. There we go. Better?
Yeah.
And do maybe even one thing even better than that. Hold on. That didn't work. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what we're seeing now, what I want to share with you is just get you into the world of what JCAP, Jerusalem Center for Applied Policy, which is the organization, the policy and research organization that I established a few years ago. What we do is we research mostly these 6 issues, and we try and come up with solutions, with policy initiatives that can help combat them, can help find solutions to these existential problems that are facing Jerusalem. So, for example, religious extremism. I'm sure you're aware of that. You see it in the crazy, insane, radical individuals that you see on television in Sydney and in Melbourne, and certainly in the United States and Canada. And yes, it exists in Jerusalem, but 100 times worse. Why? Because Jerusalem for the radical Islamic people is the core of their ideology. They see conquering Jerusalem as their main ideological goal. For example, Hamas's logo has got Jerusalem on it, right? The Temple Mount and the Al-Aqsa, the Dome of the Rock, is on the Hamas's logo. And in fact, when they started this despicable war against us through the October 7th massacre, they called their war Tufan al-Aqsa, the flood to Jerusalem, understanding that Jerusalem is the heart of the Jewish people. And if they can injure or destroy Jerusalem, they will destroy the Jewish people in the state of Israel. So they focused on Jerusalem, but using many, many other tools that ultimately they want to get to Jerusalem. So the nuclear center of the ideology is Yerushalayim. Hezbollah also, thank God, we managed to have killed off many of these Hezbollah terrorists, including yesterday an amazing strategic achievement where we eliminated the de facto chief of staff of Hezbollah using a very sophisticated missile, which basically knows how to knock on somebody's bedroom door, go in there and kill them off without really affecting the rest. And we eliminated this guy, Tabataki, or whatever his name is. And when they are killed and Hezbollah puts up a notice about their death, they say he's a martyr who died on the road to Jerusalem. That's how the radical Islamic world sees Yerushalayim. And if you know a little bit more about Islam, Islam also has a messianic side to it. where they see that the 12th Imam who will come, which is their version of the Messiah, when the 12th Imam comes, there are some conditions that need to be fulfilled before the 12th Imam comes. And one of them is to destroy Jerusalem and to destroy Israel, to take away Jewish Jerusalem from the Jews. By the way, people who believe in this 12th Imam are called Twelvers. And in fact, the newly elected mayor of New York City, I'm sure you're all aware of, Mamdani, is also a Twelver. He's a Shiite who's a Twelver. And so it's no surprise that he accuses Israel of genocide, accuses us of all terrible things, because his goal is ultimately also to destroy Jerusalem. And when I talk about potentially a Hamas supporter becoming the mayor of Jerusalem, it's not a far stretch when you see how incredibly, in a city of a huge Jewish minority, how a Hamas supporter has successfully become the mayor of New York City. So religious extremism, Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamic movement, the northern and southern movement in Israel, Tahrir, which is the ISIS version in Israel. These are all organizations that exist in Jerusalem, and they know how to maneuver the democratic system and set up non-profit organizations and freedom of religion and freedom of movement. And they function in ways that kind of bypass our laws and our enforcement, and yet succeed in radicalizing the local population to prepare them to become anti-Israel, anti-democracy, certainly anti-West, and ultimately with the goal of destroying Israel, destroying Jerusalem, and destroying the state of Israel. The second issue is education and incitement. Many of you have heard about the toxic educational programs that are taught in the schools in Eastern Jerusalem. There are 150,000 Arab students from first grade to 12th grade in schools, in hundreds of schools in Eastern Jerusalem. 70% of them teach the Palestinian Authority curriculum, right, which is not the Israeli curriculum. And the Palestinian Authority curriculum is identical to the Hamas educational curriculum, which I'm sure many of you can imagine or know, leave out the map of Israel. There's no Israel on their maps in their school books. They glorify terrorists. They talk about the goal of being a shaheed, of being a martyr. And to make things worse, if it isn't insane enough, many of those schools in Jerusalem are financed by the Israeli government, by the Israeli Education Ministry. So we have a huge problem in education and incitement in the schools. And JCAP is working to move schools from about 30% of the schools do teach the Israeli education system, and we're trying to use our influence and our research and our workers to persuade, together with the government, of course, who also does it, to persuade schools to move over to the Israeli education system and try and reduce the type of incitement and toxic education that's in the education system in Eastern Jerusalem. The third issue is terror and terror in disguise. Why do we call it terror in disguise? JCAP monitors hundreds of civic or civil organizations that seem on the front to be very, normal, to be very innocuous, whether it's education, religious organizations, sports clubs, even medical associations that you find have undercurrents of supporting terror. Just last week, they found it wasn't our organization, but on Facebook, they discovered a worker in Hadassah Hospital who is a out-and-out supporter of Hamas and of Hezbollah and wishes that Jews will be killed. And this is a worker in a medical organization. So you have many such organizations that are called terror in disguise, who are functioning, many of them with international support and even with Israeli financial support, who are functioning as legitimate organizations, yet underneath they are supporting terror, they are cultivating terror, they're cultivating BDS, anti-Israel activities, and we work to expose them and to get them delegitimized and in many cases outlawed. The other big thing, the other big issue is foreign intervention, which is the lower in the lower part of the wheel, the political dashboard, the geopolitical dashboard, foreign intervention. Here, foreign intervention is divided up between West and Middle East. Our biggest problem in foreign intervention are two very nefarious players, which are Qatar and Turkey. And I'm sure you're aware, those are basically the mothership of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the biggest threat to the West and to Israel. The Muslim Brotherhood using with Qatar money and Turkish influence. Qatar is about 330,000 citizens and about 2 million slaves. And Turkey has about 70 million citizens. And that partnership influences all over the world through all kinds of non-profit organizations, not only in Israel, but even in Australia. You can look up an organization called TIKA, Tika, which is kind of the Turkish version of USAID, a humanitarian organization. And basically their goal is to distribute and to influence local Western countries and against the West to destroy democracy using so-called humanitarian organizations. So that happens in Jerusalem very much. Turkish and Qatar money funds organizations that we monitor, and they are very, very problematic because in our case, it's not just the narrative, it's actually they are cultivating terrorists who ultimately carry out the deed. We spoke about education incitement, the foreign money and the foreign curricula that comes in has so much radicalized kids that 13 and 14-year-old Arab kids in Jerusalem have actually perpetrated terror events, shooting 2 Israelis in the city of David just a couple of years ago, stabbing a 60-year-old man in Neve Yaakov. And it's unbelievable what would get such a young kid who should be having a normal childhood to carry out terrorism. And that's foreign funding and the educational system, which is enabling that to happen. You know what? The other two issues I think are pretty clear. The diplomatic efforts to counter the Abraham Accords and human rights violations, which are obviously clear in Jerusalem, certainly in the Eastern Jerusalem. If there's a gay Arab man or woman, they've got no chance of remaining alive in the Arab neighborhoods in East Jerusalem. And certainly that undermines Israeli sovereignty. It undermines Israeli governance. Those Arabs would move to Western Jerusalem, where they can live a secure and free life. So those are just some of the issues that are facing Jerusalem today. Those are real challenges. But on the other hand, there's many, many positive things that are going on in Jerusalem today, and we work with that too. One of the things we work about is strengthening the international status of Jerusalem, trying to convince countries to move their representation, even their embassies to Jerusalem. And thank God, there are many countries that are considering that, and we work with them. Countries like Argentina, Ecuador, Fiji just moved their embassy to Jerusalem. There are 6 countries that have their embassies in Jerusalem already. The most famous is obviously the United States of America, and they were real trailblazers when it came to that. And JCAP is working quietly with a bunch of countries, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, trying to get them to actually make the move and to strengthen the international standing of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is an amazing city, and its economy is growing and blossoming. There's high-tech, med-tech, biotech, tourism, and many, many other education. The education institutions are unbelievable. Hebrew University is rated consistently in the top 100 educational institutions in the world, together with Weizmann Institute, Technion. So Jerusalem is an amazing city, but as you've seen, there are many threats that are facing the city, and JCAP, Jerusalem Center for Applied Policies, is actually the only organization, I would say center-right, who is working to as an NGO together with the Israeli government, and I might say with other governments. I just came back from Canada. I met with the heads of the Conservative Party in Australia, and I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. in 2 weeks. And we work with foreign governments also to try and get them to adopt pro-Israel and pro-Jerusalem positions. Even if they are in the opposition, certainly we educate them and help them to try and impact their own governments to either drop the narrative and change the narrative, or in fact enact pro-Israel and pro-Jerusalem policy initiatives. So that's all I have to say at the moment. I'm open for questions, and I'll just say a few words about land reclamation, and then I'll be happy. Please, Rabbi, if I'm speaking too long or too short, you just tell me the time frame, and I'm happy to work with you on that. Do you want to have some questions now on this issue, or do you want me to move over straight to the land reclamation story?
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, right, we carry on.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to stop the share at this point, and talk about land reclamation. So what is redeeming properties? We call it land reclamation or land redemption. What does that mean? So the story starts. You remember we said that Jordan illegally occupied Jerusalem, or what's known as Eastern Jerusalem, really from 1948 to 1967. After the War of Independence, unfortunately, Jerusalem, for the first time in its history, was divided. And Jordan took over biblical Jerusalem, in other words, the old city and the Mount of Olives and the city of David, but way beyond those areas, Jordan illegally occupied those areas. And when it did that, it took over many, many properties that were owned by Jews. Because as you know, the Jewish population, or you might not know this, but actually since about 1840, Jews have been a plurality or a majority in Jerusalem for over 130 years. And since the turn of the 20th century, from about 1904, Jews have been an absolute majority in Jerusalem. Unlike the narrative that you might hear, where people will give you the impression that the Jews, the Israelis, only came to Jerusalem after the Six-Day War and stole Palestinian property. Fake news. I don't want to go into all the history, but the point I want to make here is that when the Jordanians illegally occupied Eastern Jerusalem in 1948, they took over many, many Jewish properties and moved in Arabs, did not pay rent, built illegally on these properties, and enjoyed from stolen property for decades, at least for 19 years until 1967, until Israel liberated those areas and incorporated I want to show you something. Just give me a second. Give me 1 second. Hold on a second. I want to show you. A map. I'm going to share it in a second, and then it'll make it easier for you to understand. Let me just turn that around now. Ready to share? Let's get rid of tools here. Do you see this map? Can somebody answer?
Yes.
Okay, so what you see in this map is a map of Jerusalem. This area over here, the light blue area, is Western Jerusalem, and that is the area that was Jerusalem before 1967. And the black line that you see over here is the area that was annexed to Jerusalem after 1967. So when we talk about Western Jerusalem and Eastern Jerusalem, this area over here is Western Jerusalem today also. And the area between the green line and the black line, which is all of this area over here, that's what we call Eastern Jerusalem or East Jerusalem. So when we talk about uniting Jerusalem, Jerusalem was united in the Six-Day War. It basically meant that this area of Eastern Jerusalem was included in the same municipal borders as Western Jerusalem, and it became one united city, East and West, Eastern and Western, and that's united Jerusalem. And if you look at the eastern part of the city in this part of the map over here, the yellow areas designate where Arabs live, and the light blue areas here designate where Jews live. So when I spoke about Jewish neighborhoods in Eastern Jerusalem, all of these neighborhoods that I mentioned earlier, Neve Yaakov, Pisgat Ze'ev, Ramot, and so on and so forth, all these neighborhoods are Jewish neighborhoods in the area that was liberated, conquered in the Six-Day War. But the yellow areas where the 400,000 Arabs live, right, 99% of the Arabs live in the eastern part of the city, right, the yellow areas are where the Arabs live. So in the yellow areas, and especially around the Old City, if we look around the Old City, and let's zoom it in, right? If you look around the Old City over here, you can see that most of the old area in the Old City and around the Old City is yellow. And there are only small little areas here which you see are blue. And these blue areas are areas that organizations like mine have brought in donors or investors who have repurchased or purchased properties in this area, which most of it was biblical Jerusalem. The Old City and the area around the Old City holds all the areas that are mentioned in the Bible. The rest of Jerusalem was added on in the last 150 years. But biblical Jerusalem is this critical area. And as you see, it's mostly yellow, it's mostly populated by Arabs. So what organizations like mine do is we try and buy up or buy back properties that were taken over by Arabs between 1948 and 1967 and bring them back to the Jewish people. And the goal is to create larger Jewish populations in this critical real estate, which is in and around the Old City. For example, the Old City, you can see the blue area in the Old City. There's also in the Christian and Muslim quarter, there are about 35,000 Jews living in the Old City today, but only about 10%, there are 35,000 people living in the Old City today, and only about 10% are Jews, right? The rest are mostly Muslims or Christians. And certainly in this area over here, you can see the Jews are in a minority, and certainly in some of the very strategic areas. So what the land reclamation organizations do, like my organization, like Ateret Kohanim, like the City of David guys, is we focus on particular areas. We try buy up or buy back lands or release these stolen properties that were Jewish properties that were stolen by Arabs, get them back to the Jewish people. And if I can say it graphically, we try and make the area more blue than yellow. And that's what land reclamation is all about. Baruch Hashem, we've been pretty successful over the years, but it's a very tedious and difficult operation, and takes a long time, takes investment of funds and time to make it happen. And but slowly but surely, we are bringing about a situation where we are making that area more blue than it is yellow. And that's what land reclamation does. I'll give you just quickly two stories, and then I'll be happy to open up to questions in the audience. I was trying to keep my 45, 50 minutes that I was giving as introduction. I'm going to go a little bit beyond that, but two stories. The one is, if you can see here, Sheikh Jarrah, Shimon HaTzadik, right? There's right over here is the tomb of Shimon HaTzadik, who's mentioned in the Mishnah. Right in the Gemara, Shimon HaTzadik was a high priest in the Second Temple. He was a great man, and he's buried over there just north of the old city. Jews bought that property 150 years ago around the area of the tomb of Shimon HaTzadik, and it became a Jewish neighborhood until 1948. And after 1948, as I mentioned, the Jews were driven out of Eastern Jerusalem, and the Jordanians and the Arabs took over Shimon HaTzadik neighborhood, and they had families there and built homes, and in fact, there's a synagogue that Rav Ovadia Yosef, who was a previous Zatzal, who was a previous chief rabbi of Israel, had his bar mitzvah in that synagogue in the Shimon HaTzadik neighborhood, and unfortunately, after 1948. The Arab neighbors took over that synagogue and converted it into a place to keep their animals. And in 1998, when I started getting involved in the land reclamation in that area, I came to that synagogue just above the tomb of Shimon HaTzadik, and I was shocked to see how they've desecrated a shul, right, that was in Jewish hands for decades, and turned it into a place where they keep their goats. And we raised the money, and we eventually bought the property. The property was actually owned by a Jewish organization, but they hadn't done anything about it. And we bought the property. I got in investors from various countries around the world. We bought the property, and when we finally did the deal, we decided to bring in yeshiva guys to move into the property and move into the shul, so that the Arabs would not try and keep it, retain it, and take it back, because we'd bought the property from the rightful owners. So overnight, we moved in about 20 yeshiva guys, and they moved into the shul. They kicked out, there were some animals there. They got rid of them. They took over the shul, and Rabbi Benny Elon, who I worked with for many years, and he was the head of the yeshiva where the guys came from. He was there, and suddenly the kid said to him, it's nighttime and we have no light, no electricity, no nothing. What are we going to do? So Rabbi Elon said, you know what? I'll go to a neighbor, I'll take an extension cord, and I'll ask him if he doesn't mind me plugging in an extension cord and giving electricity to the boys here. And they said, well, he's, the neighbor, you're going to go to an Arab neighbor. Let's not try. And he knocks on an arbitrary door of this Arab neighbor, and he says to him in Hebrew, do you mind if I plug in my extension cord so we can have some light to the Beit Knesset, to the shul? And the Arab guy gave an incredible answer. He said to him in Hebrew, and I'll say it in Hebrew first and then translate it into English. He said the following. He said, Tamid yadati shehatzadik Shimon yachzor. He said, I always knew that the tzaddik, Shimon HaTzadik, would come back. And that's an amazing thing, and we Jews are scared to be proud of our identity, proud of who we are. And the world is giving this negative narrative, but when we stand up for who we are and we're proud of who we are, we've given so much to the world and so much to Jerusalem. And this Arab guy knew that the Jews are the rightful owners of that property. And he always knew we would come back, and come back we have. So that's just an example of land reclamation. And there's as you can see, the area is very yellow, and there's lots of work to do. And we continue to do that, Baruch Hashem. So I've had the privilege of working for Jerusalem, fighting for Jerusalem, both in the land reclamation area as well as through JCAP, the Jerusalem Center for Applied Policy, where we fight literally for the future of Jerusalem and combat all these nefarious threats that face Jerusalem today. So I'm happy to hear any questions, any comments that any of you might have. I think I've certainly spoken more than maybe I should have initially, but I'll be very happy to hear any comments or questions that you have.
I don't know that you say you spoke for so little. I could hear you all night. Yeah, I could listen to this forever. This is the most wonderful thing. I have a question though. I have a question
Sure.
for us here in Western Australia. Who, we come. Listen, I'm coming next week to Israel for Baruch Hashem, my third time this year. But it's not easy to get to Israel. It's far and it's expensive. For us here, what can we do as Jewish people here in Western Australia to support this type of behavior, or to encourage, or to have any effect whatsoever? What could we do from a practical point of view?
Well, first of all, you can take the example of my sister-in-law, Leslie, who's a great activist, and she's active on social media, and she's pro-Israel and not embarrassed to say it, and I think that's a great thing. And also donates. And I think those are two or three of the things that I would suggest immediately. First of all, be active yourself. You are amazed, the battlefield of opinions and facts is a battlefield that unfortunately we are losing. We've won a lot of wars, and we've won the war against Hamas and Hezbollah and so on. But unfortunately, the Hasbara war, the war of information, we are not winning. And everybody and anybody that can get on social media and can get on X and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and whatever and spread and pass on, that's an important. Each of you can be and should be a soldier in that field. And you can sign up to JCAP's weekly newsletters. We send out newsletters, intelligence reports, videos. Spread them around. A lot of it has got information and facts that, if you, first of all, we've got to strengthen ourselves, the Jewish people, and then we got to send that out. Also, my nephew, Ilan, I know is very active in the medical world, as well as beyond that, of spreading the word. So, I think all of you, and I'm sure many of you are already doing it, but that should be amplified. Obviously, donating to good Israeli causes. I'm not going to sell a particular cause, but I think it's important to support good organizations that are doing good work and to ensure that they continue doing that good work. And Rabbi, I think what you're doing, the personal example of coming and visiting Israel and visiting Jerusalem is critical to show your physical support and your identification is very important. And I don't know what your schedule is, Rabbi, in Jerusalem, but if you give me a call, I'll be more than happy to give you a tour. The end of next week, I'm actually traveling to Washington, I mentioned, so I won't be around, but next week I am around. And come and visit Israel, come and visit your relatives, come and visit the big family of the Jewish people, and anybody who can beyond that be active, whether it's in pro-Jewish organizations in Perth who are fighting for Israel. What's going on in Australia is terrible, and we need people who have got the ability to be activists in organizations and to stand up and to be proud and stand up against these terrible players who are just disgusting. So those are 3 or 4 of the of examples that I can think of right now.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, anything to say?
Thank you.
No, thank you so much. That was, it gave me a big boost, and I'm makes me more excited to come. I'll be in touch with Hashem, see if we can work something out. I just want to say, like, from my point of view with this, every time I go to Israel, I always make sure that I go to the old city. I was going to, of course, go to the hotel, but I always make sure that I go to Ir David. Right, Ir David is so important that we go and we see the original Jerusalem from the Bible. You must go to Ir David, and they've got some wild stuff going there. To get in touch with these organizations, I'm friendly with guys from Ateret Kohanim and also Doron Spielman as well, and those guys from Ir David. So that you make the effort. We can make the effort to be seen in these places. That's it. We as I tell my children, we talk a lot here in Australia about the traditional owners of the land. We are the traditional owners of that land, right? And we have to make sure that we Morah Mikdash, to be seen by the Beit HaMikdash, by the holy city of Yerushalayim, we have to be seen there. And it's so important. And Chaim, I think I'm so grateful for you giving us your time tonight to talk about this and to give inspiration to all of us. And B'ezrat Hashem, you should have much hatzlacha and bracha and briut and nachat and all the things that you want and all the things that you need to keep up with the holy work. And B'ezrat Hashem, we can all meet in Yerushalayim together.
Amen. I just want to say, please see us as a thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to point out that please see me as an address in Israel. You can get my details from Gary and from Leslie and the others. And when you come to Israel, if you want to visit, if you want to take a tour, or even if you want some guidance about what to do, we have an incredible team of people, and we can be a good reference point for you in Jerusalem and in Israel. And so again, thank you very, very much for the opportunity. And Rabbi Lieberman, I'll give you another challenge. If you want me to come out to Western Australia, give me a good excuse to visit Gary and Leslie and family, I'll be happy to do that too, and do the tour around Perth and maybe other places too. I did it many years ago on the Zionist seminars in the 1980s, and I'll be happy to do it again in the 21st century too. So that's also an option. So thank you again. And Laila Tov, B'shana Hazot B'Yerushalayim.
Thank you, Scott. All right, well, that is that's our last one for the year, for the last Zoom shiur for the year. We'll see what happens next year. I'm sure we'll find some wild and exciting things to do. Thank you very much, everyone who's participated, and thank you for all your support and putting up with dodgy technology. And it seems that I finally this time made it work properly and easily. And the speaker even turned up himself, which was also good. But yeah, kol hakavod to everyone, and everyone should be well.